Hello everyone, my name is Sandra Martinez and this is my final exam for the Resources and ICT course. The exam is divided in two parts, so let's start. We have a group of 25 students in the second cycle of primary education, highly motivated by audiovisual media and with basic digital skills. Following the pandemic, they are showing difficulties managing emotions such as frustration and empathy. After seeing this situation, I've decided to carry out a project in which the children learn about their emotions, how to identify them, and how to deal with them in order to become emotionally mature adults. The objective of this project is for children to manage and understand their own emotions and those of others, improve coexistence, and learn to use technology to create content related to emotions safely. After analyzing my situation, I asked AI to generate a project proposal based on this information, as you can see in screen, and this is what it gave me. The AI generates a project-based learning project focused on emotional education through digital narrative. However, the proposal isn't perfect and it assumes that children between 8 and 10 can coordinate complex tasks such as writing a script, taking photos frame by frame, or record their own voices without getting stuck. It also assumes that in a primary education classroom you can record an audio or make a long stop motion without noise or other problems interfering in that process. Furthermore, it also believes that by just making a piece of clay breathe deeply, children will know how to regulate themselves. Some aspects that I found problematic is that it proposes a 2 to 3 minute stop motion, but this could be really frustrating for such small kids. And at the same time, it doesn't take into account all the data that you have to accept in order to use different apps. To sum up, the proposal is a really good proposal, but obviously I will have to adapt it and change all these problems that I found in order to make it perfect and, let's say, more realistic. Starting with the activities, my students will have to create a digital comic called What is My Character Feeling? And this process will be really structured. First, we will dedicate some time in a group discussion to explore the names of emotions and what each one makes us feel. Then, I will present them with an everyday conflict situation such as losing a game at recess or a misunderstanding with a friend. I will suggest different emotions that might predominate and ask them to think about what the best reaction would be in each case. The students' work will follow these steps. First, they take a sheet of paper, reflect on the options, and write a script or analog draft of 6 panels. Secondly, once the draft is approved, they log into Canva using their school accounts and select a comic template to edit. Next, with my support as their teacher, they design the avatars, change their facial expression to reflect the chosen emotion, and write the dialogue. Finally, when finished, they print the comic on paper and create a brief or a presentation explaining why they chose the particular emotion. Regarding the students' role, they are active creators the whole time. They act as script writers when they are discussing the situation. They are designers when creating the comic, and speakers when then presenting what they have created. If we analyze the added value of the digital tool using the PIC-RAD framework, in the PIC dimension, the students' relationship is creative, as they build their own digital product to solve a problem. In the RAD dimension, the technology amplifies learning. Canva offers immediate visual resources of expressions and scenarios. This prevents the student from becoming frustrated by not knowing how to draw by hand, allowing them to concentrate all their cognitive energy on reflecting on managing the emotion. For the assessment, I will use a rubric that weights three basic aspects. First, emotional content and empathetic conflict resolution, that is a 40%. Correct and independent use of the digital tool, 30%. And clarity and respect during the oral presentation, another 30%. When evaluating the tool under the e-learning privacy rubric, I noticed that Canva can collect data if it's used openly. To mitigate this risk, students will work with pseudonyms and first names, not including surnames or real photos to guarantee their privacy and security. A key pedagogical tension is innovation versus distraction. Canva is an app that has a lot of stickers and a lot of colors that could distract children of focusing on the emotion, which is the point of the activity. My strategy to solve this is to make a preliminary paper draft mandatory. No one can turn on the screens until the emotional content of the story is validated. Regarding communication with families, we would communicate with them through Classroom or any other app that the school has to communicate with parents. And we would just basically say to them that it is completely safe, that their children's data is protected, and they won't be playing with the screens as a lot of parents think, but it would be a really positive and active activity that will be really beneficial for the children. Finally, here it is the ACAD framework that articulates all the learning design of this project. Regarding the two other activities, we would also do a stop motion and use a chroma key. For the stop motion animation, the process would be a little bit similar. Children will create a story in which they represent, for example, the strongest emotion they have felt during the previous day and the reason they felt that way. After that, they would present that video, the stop motion, to the class. Children would have to create their own characters with their own materials, the environment, and obviously create the story. So they would always be active creators of their own learning. However, one problem that we may face is that students may not have the economic resources to afford the materials for the stop motion. In that case, I would create a box with different materials I could bring in order for those students to create their own stop motion. And finally, even though I don't have the resources to use a real chroma key, I think it would also be really beneficial for the children. They could use it to record a video in which they draw how they see emotions such as anger, sadness, or happiness. And after that, explain the effects those emotions has on the body. And later on, that video would be shown for the whole class as well. With this, my project finished. So now let's move to part 2. In this case, the questions I decided to answer were question 2 and 4. Starting with question 2, the two theoretical concepts that I chose were PLE and the TPAC framework, and the two technological ones were digital comic creation and stop motion animation. Starting with the personal learning environment, this is the definition that I like the most, given by the government of the Canary Islands. You can find all the complete references in the script PDF. Having said this, to understand how this concept translates to the reality of my future teaching career, let's imagine this situation. I start working at a school that implements educational robotics in primary school, an area in which I am not yet an expert. Instead of waiting for a formal training course, I actively construct my PLE. I search for video tutorials on YouTube to understand the basics, follow expert teachers on social media like X or Instagram who share their lines of code and templates, and join active Telegram or Reddit teacher communities where real classroom dilemmas are discussed. In this way, I demonstrate that a PLE is not a static tool, but a dynamic network that drives my ongoing professional development. Continuing with the TPAC framework, here it is the definition that I consider to be the most official, and here it is an example. Imagine I need to teach my 6th grade students the concept of ecosystems and food chains. This is my content knowledge. To avoid a boring passive lecture, I designed a project-based learning unit focused on collaborative problem solving. This is my pedagogical knowledge. Finally, instead of just showing them a video, I introduced block-based programming where students use Scratch to code an interactive simulation of a food chain. This is my technological knowledge. The magic happens when all three combines. Technology is no longer an ornament and becomes the exact vehicle that makes the content understandable through modern pedagogy. Now let's move to the technological concepts, starting with digital comic creation. This is one of the most exact definitions of digital comic creation that I could find, and here it is an example of how it can be used in a classroom. Imagine my 4th grade students are working on conflict resolution in the school playground. Instead of writing a traditional essay, I teach them how to use a tool like Pixton or Canva. The students learn to structure the space into 3 panels, beginning, middle, and end, drag avatars, change facial expressions to reflect emotions, and adjust speech bubbles. This technical mastery allows them to translate real ethical problems into a concrete and engaging activity produced by themselves. Finally, regarding stop motion animation, here it is a definition that I consider to be really accurate, and here it is an example of it being implemented in a school. In this case, let's imagine my students have to model different characters out of clay to raise awareness about environmental care. The instrumental challenge is using an app like Stop Motion Studio on tablets. Students learn to lock the camera focus so it doesn't move, set the speed to 6 or 8 frames per second, and coordinate the precise movement of the clay figures with each camera shot. Ultimately, they transform physical materials into an animated shot thanks to their technical mastery of the app. So, to answer this question, I focus on how these areas apply to different tasks we did during the course and how it allowed me to see technology use in education from another perspective. First, the activity where we created an interactive diagram of our personal PLE on the Mural platform directly impacted my development in Area 1, professional engagement. The Teach Compedu document indicates that this area involves using digital tools for professional reflection and continuous learning. By visually mapping where I get my information from, who I connect with, or how I learn, I use technology to reflect on my own identity and my growth as a future teacher. Second, the exercise in which we use Scratch to configure and program the Cody Rocky robot helped me develop Area 2, digital resources, which requires teachers to know how to create and modify interactive content. This activity allowed me to understand how to sequence commands to make objects come to life and to adapt future technological resources to my students. Finally, the experience of creating a stop motion to raise awareness about climate change developed my Area 3, teaching and learning. According to the framework, this area focuses on how to orchestrate devices in the classroom to guide students' experiments. Designing this activity was useful for me to understand the effort required to coordinate frame-by-frame capture, manage time, and structure the learning sequence. I learned that my role is not to give children a screen but to orchestrate the digital environment so they can collaborate, investigate, and become active creators. In conclusion, these 3 activities have shown me that digital competence is learned by doing, moving from personal reflection on Mural to tangible creations in Scratch and stop motion. Okay, so now that everything is done, let's reflect. To start with, I think the information is clearly explained and there has been reasoning and reflection on it. and also the way it is presented in the video, I think it's the correct one. Furthermore, I think the ideas I've proposed are interesting and innovative to use in a classroom. For me, the most difficult role was the spotter. I consider it a really tedious and time-consuming role since you have to check other groups' posts and see what you could have done better. Sometimes posts aren't uploaded in time and it's difficult to do a proper job. I used the AI basically to better understand what was the point of this exam and to give me some creative ideas on which I could base my proposal and my project. However, it was me who took those ideas and adapted them as well as the approaches that it proposed me. Basically, I thought about what I would have liked to have back then when I was in primary school. From that, I developed the whole project. I finished saying this is a project I'm really proud of, and I think it really reflects all the knowledge that I've gained during